Well, hello and welcome. This is your host, Lisa Neller, and you are listening to a Bliss Buddy Chat, a self-care and healthy living conversation worth listening to, because what we bring to the table are self-care strategies to make life more enjoyable. BringMeBliss.com is a self-care and healthy living blog for women. It's about helping women achieve utter joy and contentment in spite of their trials and circumstances. Our guests have an expertise in the self-care space, and we are bringing you real stories, tips, strategies, and solid advice for achieving a better life. Our content delivers information that addresses mind, body, and spirit. We promote getting in touch with all areas of yourself for better understanding and developing skills to live life intelligently. We want to help you reduce your stress and workload so you can live life to the fullest. This conversation is for you to learn better strategies for living well, eating well, moving well, and working well. Living out the second half of life with gusto, meaning, and purpose is what we are about. I'm interested in real stories from real people who have gone through rough stuff and have come out the other side. Each Bliss Buddy conversation includes myself and my Bliss Buddy, a real woman who helps bring joy to others with her spirit, her heart, her life, and her work. Today's Bliss Buddy is Paulette Bodeman. Paulette is a yoga and meditation teacher, a writer, and a life coach. She is also a Reiki master in the Usui method and is certified in the systems of Anusara and integrative yoga therapy with a 500-hour registered yoga teacher certificate. She has been teaching yoga and meditation for over 15 years. Paulette has studied with meditation masters and tantric scholars for over 20 years, and she has a degree in transpersonal psychology. She continues to study and learn, which is what makes her such a great teacher and coach. Paulette is the founder of the Worth System, a program that helps women improve the quality of their lives. She wants every woman to wake up to her worth. Paulette is a person of passion and exuberance. I know this because she is one of my teachers. She is also a friend and colleague, and I love seeing Paulette in person because she always makes me feel like she's so happy to see me, and that makes me feel better. Her presence helps me feel grounded and happy, so I'm delighted to have her with us today. Welcome, friend. Welcome,
Thank
Paulette.
you. Thank you, and thank you. I'm honored to be here and be your Bliss Buddy and be a part of the amazing work that you do in the world and what you're offering to women out there. So thank you, Lisa.
Yes, well, thank you. And okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. Paulette, you are one of those people who seem pretty blissful to me. You seem to have a nice life, and you have chosen joy over sorrow, frustration, or negative thinking. But I know that it didn't come naturally for you to feel blissful. So I would like you to take us back to your upbringing and lead us into the place where you started to implement life tools that helped transform you into the blissful woman you are today. And I know that this could take a while, so I'm letting you know that it's okay to take your time, and we will listen intently. I know that could be a lifelong story, so... But
yeah. Okay. Well, I will jump right in there then. Interesting that you should ask that particular question because I'm really just plunging into a new project and writing about those early years. I grew up, I'm second generation Italian American, and I grew up with pretty fairly normal childhood, nothing too outrageously nutty going on. But when you go back and you look at certain areas in your life, you think, oh, okay, that was interesting. And my grandparents on both sides were from Italy, and my maternal grandmother actually had a arranged marriage. So that I think is very interesting. She came over as a young girl. Her brother arranged for her to marry my grandfather. I think she was about
Wow.
17, 18. Yeah. And when I think about what this amazing young woman endured coming over literally on a ship, and not knowing, well, she had met my grandfather, but she really didn't know him very well at all, and to start a life for herself. And so I'm learning too about more about my Italian culture and heritage, and how it was so, Italians really stayed inclusive. They were, as they came and they migrated to America, they were looked down upon, as many immigrants were, so that story isn't very different. But what it did to the Italian psyche and to the family was that, you know, you didn't trust outsiders, you kept secrets, you held things in, you only talked to the family. And though my parents were born here and in looking back, were much more, had a broader vision, that was still instilled, I believe, in our DNA. And so how that particular trait of keeping secrets and holding things in the family and being more inclusive, or exclusive really, how that ran through the generations. And in looking back, I see that in some way that was true for myself. And I grew up in a two-flat. My aunt and uncle and my cousins lived upstairs, and we lived in the middle floor, and it was a great big happy family. We didn't have any closed doors. We went up and down between each other's houses. If we didn't like what one family was eating, we went upstairs to the other, or they came down. Usually it was my cousins coming to my mother, because she always cooked amazing dinners. So there was a lot of love. And I heard you say, when you were describing me, a lot of passion, that I'm passionate. And that, I think, comes from that fiery Italian nature. There is such a passion for life, and I did learn that from my family of origin, and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, so that this zest for life. And yet my dad's mother passed young, and she tended to be more melancholy. You know, they used to call it melancholia, and I believe she suffered from depression in looking back. So there is that grain inside of me too, that in my earlier years, I tended to go in that direction. I tended to be sad and quiet and get depressed and not feel very worthy. You know, my cousins were all exuberant, and they was a self that I really didn't. I was a little bit outside of that, a little bit different than the way my brothers were. I'm an only girl out of three brothers. So I got married really young, first time. I got married very young, because that too seemed to be, you got married and you raised a family. And yet I was conflicted, because as a young child, I really always wanted to be a teacher. I had a third grade teacher that I just fell in love with, and she presented like a different worldview to me. She was very Americanized, and so I wanted to be a teacher, and I had that in my heart and my goals, and my parents encouraged that, because no one in the family before had gone on to college, had an education. And they really instilled that in my brothers and in my cousins, that, you know, education gave you a foot in the door, something that they didn't have. So I really wanted that for myself, but I fell in love really young, and my first husband quit high school. And I remember, Lisa, thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if he quits high school, how can I go on to college? You know, like yeah. So I just, you know, I remember being very angry and saying, you can't do this. You know, how could you, no one quits high school.
Yeah.
And so he did, and went on to become a successful barber and have a career and own a salon. And I chose not to go to college. I made a conscious decision that if I go to college and become a teacher, that the we would be going in two different directions, that our worldview would be different. And I diminished a dream. And it started, we went on and we got married and we were in love, and yet there was this underlying something inside me that kept gnawing at me that there's got to be more. There has to be more. When I ended up going on to barber school, and so became a barber as well, the way he did. And our plan was that I would work in the salon with him, but I was offered a job, and at that time, many years ago, men's hairstyling was the big deal, and so I became a men's hairstylist, and women were a commodity. So I was offered a job in a very affluent area, suburb of Chicago, the north side, from a young man who was successful already, and it was a very exclusive salon with the clientele being of many different, very diverse and very wealthy clients. And so I stepped into that world and went, okay, there's more to life than my little Italian family on this block, Mm-hmm. You know how it is when your eyes start to open and you go, oh.
Yes.
Yeah, there's more here, and they're reading different kinds of books and seeing different kind of films and traveling to different places, and so worlds and worlds kept opening up to me. And ultimately, of that story was I started to really not feel good about myself, and I was fighting within myself that I wanted. I was angry with myself that I didn't follow my dream, that I didn't go to school. I was trying to figure out how I could, maybe do that still. And ultimately, my husband and I divorced. But during that time, I really went astray. I started, dabbling in, the drug world and just really searching for happiness. Mm-hmm. That was, I couldn't find it in myself, so I started acting out, and in a way that I hadn't acted out as a young girl. I mean, I didn't do that. You didn't do that in your family.
Right.
And so a client of mine, one day, he was very concerned about me, and he suggested that I take a yoga and meditation class. And this was, many years ago. And I did, and it was a Kundalini yoga class. And so I went, and I was like blown away. I walked into the ashram, and people were sitting around on cushions, and some people were in robes and had turbans on, and they were chanting. And I thought, oh my God, I know there's more worlds out there, but this is like really strange. And they were chanting in Sanskrit, and something deep inside called me, and yet it frightened me. Mm-hmm. I thought, this is a little bit, I knew that I would have to really be self-accountable and really start to work on myself. So I didn't fully put both feet in. It like opened up my eyes again in a different way. And I tried it, and I would dabble in yoga and meditation, and then I would not. And then I would, try something else. And I went for, therapy and did all the other more mainstream type of ways to get yourself together. Mm-hmm. And until finally I divorced, I moved away, I remarried, and I thought, And I ended up taking a yoga class, an asana class, at a local gym when my boy was just a baby, little toddler. And I thought, that's it. I can't fight this anymore. I'm home. There was something about being in your body, moving in a way, being with yourself that I couldn't deny anymore that that's where I needed to be.
So your son was a boy at the time. So you're talking, this is almost 30 years ago or more, or how long? That's a long time.
Yeah, to over
Yeah.
20 years ago. My son just turned 27, so yeah, so he was just a
Okay.
couple of years old, so over 20 years, and 25 years maybe. Yes. And so I started at the gym, and then, then you start to, okay, I want to learn more, and I started seeking teachers out and seeking a different place to actually practice, and then I realized that, there was more to yoga than what you did on the mat, than doing postures. And that for me, if I just stayed there, it was just another form of exercise. So I started to explore meditation. And I grew up Catholic, and my family was fairly Catholic. And so I wasn't practicing that faith anymore, but there was so much that was meaningful to me about the religion and about more the ritual. There was many things of that I was still really drawn to. So I connected the dots there. There was a thread that, burning incense, sitting quietly, listening to what was happening in your mind. So I started practicing meditation and then sought teachers in that area as well. So meditation teachers and philosophy teachers, and I went back to school, and I earned my degree. And,
That's fantastic.
mm-hmm.
I love to hear that. It's very inspiring that you can always, I mean, I went to college later than the average person. And I just always admire people who go back and attain their dream. So you got your degree and you kept practicing meditation, and at some point you got your certification to teach yoga. Yeah.
Yes. One of the very first true, I would say, really true yoga teachers who, how there's always often if we are conscious enough, at least if you have enough awareness, there's usually someone in your life that sees something more in you that you haven't been able to see yet in yourself. And whether you call them a mentor or, champion or whatever this person you may describe. Well, that was my teacher. And she said to me, someday you're going to teach yoga. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I couldn't touch my toes. I really had no desire to teach yoga at all. And she said, yeah, you someday. And so she would encourage me in very loving ways and in fairly gentle ways. And one of the great things, too, I admire about her is I got so far in my asana practice where she actually said it was time for me to move on, and that she recommended a couple of teachers to me. And so she kind of, gave me a boot out of her door and into somebody else's door. And so that's when, again, then a deeper discovery happened. I started seeking out different teachers again, and then remembered what she had said. And so I started to say, well, maybe I can be a yoga teacher. Maybe that's the direction I want to go in. So when I first went back from my psychology degree, my transpersonal psych degree, I had thought that I was going to continue to go and get my master's in traditional psychotherapy. And so I was like sort of traversing both worlds, the psychotherapy world and the yoga world, when I realized that that was the direction my heart was calling me. So I earned the 4-year degree. I didn't go on for my master's, and then I just stepped right into the yoga world and got my training and continued to train. I took several different teacher trainings, yoga teacher trainings. And I must say, too, that what was really helpful for me was when I remarried, and my husband was very supportive of me continuing to grow and evolve. So he took on responsibility with our son when I went away for a 2-week teacher training. He made sure that he was taken care of, and my mother stepped in, and people stepped in to help you when they see you really. I call it when you're lit up inside. When you get lit up inside, you know how that feels like.
Yeah.
And other people respond to that, and they want to help you. They want to help you go for your dreams. And that's what happened with me. My husband, my mom, my friends, everybody kind of stepped in and up to help me move forward in that. So I earned my training and started teaching.
Wonderful. So you went through this whole transformation thing, which probably takes years, because for me, I mean, none of us stop evolving as long as we keep trying to evolve. But you've developed some masterful skills in this area, in yoga and meditation and even coaching. And I guess what I want to ask you is, what are some of the ways other women get stuck, or what are you seeing in women? Is it a matter of self-esteem? What is it? Life experiences, past experiences? I don't know. Can you pinpoint anything that women tend to go through in a general sense?
I think all of that. I think that's awesome. Yes. And I think one of the things I want to make a point of too is that you're so right on, that we don't master something once. And that life experiences, when I first got into this yoga world, I thought, okay, now I had my tsunamis, I call them personal tsunami. I had those challenges. I got divorced. Stuff happens. If I really stay on this path, nothing bad is ever going to happen again. And that's just like childish thinking, fantasy thinking. Life is life, and nature sometimes, we have hurricanes and literal tsunamis and all of that. Life can be violent. And so nature itself is always expanding and contracting. Our life is never truly smooth sailing. So I think sometimes we're not prepared, that we think, okay, we got this. I got this once, and nothing is going to happen again. And so just to know that it's sort of a ride, like you're riding a wave, and to continue to build your toolbox. And I think for me, my self-worth was diminished, which is why I started that worth system. I felt that I wasn't good enough. I was, who's going to come to my classes? Why am I, who do I think I am? There's those self-worth issues. And I believe that it's a lot of that, Lisa. It's maybe our cultural upbringing, like the realization that things were secretive in my family, our own self-limiting beliefs, what our culture, what our society, what we've come into the world with, that they put a cap on us. Sometimes we just have black and white thinking. It's got to be this way or that way. And if we bump up against ourselves, as I call it, or a challenge comes up, maybe we're facing, a career change or the loss of a job or something, those self-esteem, self-worth issues, self-limitations, they all start to rear its ugly head again.
Yeah.
That's what I see what happens with women.
Okay, so you mentioned your tsunami, and I'm just gonna briefly say that you did go through a devastating personal challenge. I remember you calling it a tsunami, and just to clarify that, a tsunami is an unusually large sea wave that can be very destructive and damaging and completely overwhelming. And this is what was happening to you, and it was an event that could potentially have made you very bitter and angry and altogether unhappy. And there were probably some microbursts in there as well. And we don't need to go into details of that event, but tell us how you weathered that storm. What were your go-to lifesavers? And in what forms did the lifeboat come?
My go-to was first, though, when my very first go-to, so some days when you have something like that, you don't even want to get out of bed, but you get out of bed. You make a choice, I'm going to get out of bed. And I made a decision that, is this bigger than me? And are there other people that need me to get out of bed? And so when I made that decision that yes, so I did it more for someone else than for myself. So that helped me. And then I had to go to, because our minds get crazy. You know, when we're going through stuff like that, we tell ourselves things, fear just comes into our world. And so being in the yoga world, I went to a mantra, because a mantra it actually has a high vibration just because of the Sanskrit, the way the seed sound rolls around in your tongue. It lifts you up. And from a scientific point of view, if you reroute your thinking, you literally can reroute your thinking all the time. You know, if you keep going down a negative path, you know, something terrible is going to happen, this bad thing's going to happen, bad thing's going to happen. You keep digging a groove deeper and deeper, and that bad thing probably will happen. But if you can literally reroute it into something more uplifting or positive, you can stop that train from derailing. And so I gave myself a mantra, and mine was Om Namah Shivaya. And it doesn't have to be Sanskrit. It could be, you know, anything that is uplifting to you, the person personally, you know, to your belief system. But Om Namah Shivaya was represented to me another way of saying, give it up to God. You know, take this, help me, because it's in the name of Shiva. And Shiva, in this case, represents something greater, something higher than your personality. So when my mind just went away with horrendous thoughts and fear, I literally would just, under my breath, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, always. So that was a huge tool. It seems very simple, but it stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah. And it's information you had in your head, you know, that you could go to, that a tool that it's something I would call a tool.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anything else that you can think of that, I mean, I know you talked to people, you processed, you had prayer and that kind of thing.
I did. I sought therapy. I sought a therapist and later a life coach, which is why I went in this direction as well. And you know, I think I really took a hard look at myself. And even though I was on a path I thought that was a path of enlightenment or path, the yoga path, you know, more uplifting kind of life, I really sat down and started what I call self-accountability. You know, well, it's out there, self-accountability, but I really believe that is so valuable. Not that I caused this bad thing to happen. I'm not big enough to cause something like that, but I did look at where in my life was I not paying attention? Was I not paying attention to some really, to the choices I was making, to my own family, you know, to my child, to my husband? Was I just sort of gliding through life and really not accountable for my actions? That was really uncomfortable, Lisa, and it was really important to my healing.
Really interesting. I was talking to Angie last week about accountability. That's something that she kind of coaches on. So that's very interesting. Okay, well, let's lighten it up a little bit. Tell me what kinds of things bring you bliss?
Lots of things. Well, being on this call brings me bliss. I think what you're doing is really, really powerful and meaningful.
Thank you.
I mean that. And being with good friends, one of the things that I learned was be with the people that uplift you and inspire you. You're one of them. So hanging out with good friends and having great conversation brings me bliss. Hiking, being out in nature, really connecting to nature on that level. Eating really good food, clean food. And before we got on this call, I went and took my doTERRA oil, the wild orange, and put it in my water and just smelled it and rubbed it on my hands.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm drinking my grapefruit water now, so we had similar thoughts.
Sometimes it's those real simple things that you could do for your own self-care and enjoyment that are so
Yeah.
blissful. Mm-hmm.
They can be little things, huh? Little things.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Um,
when we make the little things extraordinary, everything about life then becomes so much more blissful.
yes, I agree. I agree. All right. So what one thing can you tell our listeners that would help them get their worth on? Let's just say in the
Mm.
next 24 to 48 hours, what action could they take?
I would say be curious about yourself. Just sit for 5 minutes or take a hike and not have your headphones on and not be talking to your best friend, but to be curious about yourself and your life and to look around to see the beauty and in everything. To take a hike and see the different colors changing and take in the world and enliven your senses. I think that we dampen our senses a lot. And one of the main ingredients for me, one of the things that I've learned through many tsunamis and microbursts are to take a closer look at yourself without judgment, but with curiosity and excitement. This is your life.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So be curious, start paying attention, grab a little more joy from the very little things, and then go from there. Then, so Paulette, you lead immersions, teacher trainings, retreats, teleseminars, and you do one-on-one coaching. You have a lot of offerings.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want people to know right now about your current offerings? What would you like people to know? I know you have a retreat coming up in Umbria, Italy, and some other things. So anything you want to tell us?
Yeah, we have a couple openings that happened in our Umbria retreat in Italy that is going to be fantastic, fabulous.
And that's in May, right? It's coming up in May?
There's going to be
Paulette? All of a sudden, I'm having trouble hearing you. Hello? Paulette? Well, I don't know what happened to Paulette. I do know, since I can't hear her, and assuming we're still recording here, that you can find Paulette and all of her information at www.paulettebodeman.com. And I'm going to spell that for you. It's Paulette, B as in boy, O-D as in day, E-M as in Mary, A-N, Paulette Bodeman. .com. So look for her, and she does have the retreat coming up in Umbria, Italy in May, and she does one-on-one coaching. And again, you can find more information about all of her teacher trainings and all of that on her website. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. Paulette, are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So bummed that she got cut off of our recording, but I do want to thank you, Paulette, for joining me today and being my guest. And I look forward to, maybe we'll do this again, okay, so that we can re-record. Thanks for joining us, everyone. You have a wonderful day, and don't forget to stop by bringmebliss.com and see what we have to offer there. More self-care strategies and tools for you.